It was one of those perfect summer days in the city park, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in a cloudless sky, casting dappled shadows through the leaves of the oak trees. The grass was that vibrant shade of green that seems almost unreal, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of nearby food trucks and freshly cut grass. I remember it so vividly because it was the day everything changed between Jake and me. Let me take you back to that afternoon and tell you about the hammock incident that transformed our friendship into something much more meaningful. Jake and I had been friends for nearly 2 years by then. We met during our sophomore year of college when we were assigned as lab partners in organic chemistry. He was everything I wasn't: outgoing, spontaneous, and effortlessly charming. Jake was the type of person who made friends wherever he went, with his infectious laugh and the way he could turn even the most mundane stories into adventures. I, on the other hand, was Liam the planner, the cautious one who always thought 3 steps ahead. My friends often joked that I wouldn't cross the street without checking the traffic patterns for the past week. Despite our differences, or perhaps because of them, Jake and I clicked immediately. That particular Saturday, we had decided to spend the afternoon at Riverside Park. It was Jake's idea, of course. "Come on, Liam," he had texted me that morning. "It's too beautiful to stay inside. Let's go people watch and pretend we're sophisticated urban dwellers." How could I say no to that? So there we were, wandering through the park with iced coffees in hand, pointing out dogs we wanted to pet, and making up backstories for the interesting characters we passed. As we rounded a bend in the path, Jake suddenly grabbed my arm, his eyes lighting up with that mischievous spark I had come to both love and fear. "Look," he exclaimed, pointing toward a small clearing between 2 trees. There, hanging like a canvas hammock between the sturdy trunks, was a vibrant blue hammock, currently unoccupied and swaying gently in the breeze. Before I could protest, Jake was already pulling me toward it. "We have to try it out," he insisted, his excitement palpable. "When was the last time you were in a hammock, Liam?" "Probably never, knowing you." He wasn't entirely wrong. My cautious nature had kept me from many experiences that involved the possibility of falling or public embarrassment. Hammocks definitely fell into both categories. "I don't know, Jake." I hesitated, looking around at the other parkgoers. "It looks like it might be someone's personal hammock. And even if it's public, it's probably meant for one person at a time." I was already imagining the scenario. Both of us trying to climb in, the hammock flipping over, and us ending up in an undignified heap on the ground, while onlookers recorded the whole thing for their social media amusement. Jake rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "It's a public park, Liam. And look, there's a little sign on the tree." He pointed to a small wooden plaque that read, "Community Hammock. Enjoy responsibly." "See? It's practically begging us to use it. And where's the fun in going one at a time? Come on, live a little." There it was, Jake's catchphrase that had led me into countless situations outside my comfort zone over the past 2 years. And the thing was, I had never regretted saying yes to any of his seemingly wild suggestions. Whether it was impromptu road trips or trying exotic foods from street vendors, Jake had a knack for pushing me toward experiences that ended up enriching my life. With a resigned sigh that barely masked my growing excitement, I nodded. "Fine, but if we break it and have to pay for damages, I'm blaming you entirely." Jake's answering grin was worth the risk. Getting into the hammock turned out to be a much more complicated endeavor than either of us had anticipated. Jake went first, settling himself in the middle of the blue fabric with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before. He looked up at me expectantly, patting the space beside him that, from my perspective, seemed non-existent. "There's no room," I protested, crossing my arms. "I'll wait until you're done." "Don't be ridiculous," Jake laughed. "There's plenty of space. You just have to commit to it. Here, give me your hand." Against my better judgment, I extended my hand, which Jake promptly grabbed, pulling me toward the hammock with surprising strength. What followed was nothing short of a physical comedy routine. I tried to delicately lower myself onto the edge of the hammock, but the fabric immediately shifted under my weight, causing me to lose balance. Jake grabbed my waist to stabilize me, but this only served to tip the hammock in the opposite direction. After several failed attempts, accompanied by increasing laughter from both of us, I finally managed to land somewhat gracefully beside Jake. The hammock, designed for relaxation, suddenly became the most intimate space I had ever shared with another person. We were pressed together from shoulder to ankle, the fabric of the hammock creating a cocoon that forced us into a position that was somewhere between spooning and being sardines in a can. I could feel the warmth of Jake's body against mine, his breath tickling the back of my neck as he laughed at our predicament. "See? Plenty of room," Jake said, his voice closer to my ear than I had expected. I could hear the smile in his words, and despite my initial reservations, I found myself relaxing into the shared space. "Your definition of plenty needs serious reconsideration," I retorted, trying to adjust my position without causing us both to tumble out. Every movement seemed to bring us closer together, and I became acutely aware of the way Jake's arm had naturally draped across my waist to keep us balanced. Once we had settled into a somewhat stable position, Jake used his foot to push against the ground, setting the hammock in motion. The gentle swinging sensation was surprisingly pleasant, creating a rhythmic movement that felt almost hypnotic. The world around us seemed to slow down, the sounds of the park fading into the background as we swayed between the trees. "This is nice, right?" Jake asked, his voice softer now. "Worth the struggle to get in?" I had to admit it was. There was something incredibly peaceful about being suspended above the ground, cocooned in fabric, with the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves above us. The fact that I was sharing this moment with Jake made it even more special, though I wasn't ready to articulate why that might be. As we swung in comfortable silence, I found myself becoming increasingly aware of the physical closeness between us. Jake's chest pressed against my back with each breath he took, and his arm remained draped over my waist, his hand occasionally adjusting its position but never moving away. In any other context, with any other person, this level of intimacy might have felt uncomfortable. But with Jake, it felt natural, as if we had been meant to share this hammock all along. The conversation flowed easily between us, as it always did. We talked about our classes, our plans for the upcoming summer break, and the latest movie we had watched together. But there was a different quality to our interaction now, a layer of meaning beneath the words that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps it had always been there, and I was only now becoming aware of it. "Remember when we first met?" Jake asked suddenly, his voice carrying a nostalgic tone. "You were so serious about that chemistry lab. I thought you were going to have a heart attack when I suggested we try a different approach than what was in the manual." I laughed at the memory. "You wanted to mix the chemicals in reverse order just to see what happens. I was convinced we were going to blow up the lab. But we didn't," Jake reminded me. "In fact, our experiment worked better than anyone else's. That's when I knew we'd make a good team. Your caution and my spontaneity balance each other out." There was something about the way he said "good team" that made my heart beat a little faster. I wondered if he could feel it, given how close we were. The hammock continued to swing, and I found myself getting lost in the rhythm, in the sensation of being suspended in time and space with Jake. It was during one particularly enthusiastic swing that things took an unexpected turn. Jake had pushed a bit harder against the ground, causing the hammock to swing higher than before. I instinctively tensed, grabbing onto his arm that was still around my waist. "Relax," Jake murmured, his lips close to my ear. "I've got you. I won't let you fall." Something about those words, combined with the physical closeness and the swaying motion, created a moment of clarity for me. The feelings I had been pushing aside for months, the quickened heartbeat whenever Jake texted me, the way I looked forward to our time together more than anything else, the inexplicable jealousy when he mentioned dating prospects, suddenly came into sharp focus. I was falling for my best friend, and the realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. As if sensing the shift in my thoughts, Jake tightened his arm around me slightly. "What are you thinking about? You've gone quiet." I considered deflecting with a joke or changing the subject, but something about the moment, the intimacy of our position, the privacy created by the hammock's gentle swinging, gave me courage I didn't know I possessed. "I'm thinking about us," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "About how this feels, right somehow." There was a pause, during which I could hear nothing but the hammock's ropes creaking softly and the distant sounds of the park. I held my breath, suddenly afraid that I had crossed a line we couldn't come back from. "I've been thinking the same thing," Jake finally replied, his voice carrying a vulnerability I had rarely heard from him. "For a while now, actually." My heart seemed to stop for a moment before racing ahead. "Really? You never said anything." Jake laughed softly, the sound vibrating through his chest and into my back. Neither did you. I guess we're both a little cautious when it matters most. I wanted to turn around to see his face, to confirm that we were talking about the same thing, but the precarious balance of the hammock made it impossible without risking us both tumbling out. Instead, I placed my hand over his where it rested on my waist, intertwining our fingers in a gesture that felt both new and somehow familiar. I didn't want to risk our friendship, I confessed. It means too much to me. It means everything to me too, Jake replied. But lately I've been wondering if we're missing out on something even better by playing it safe. The hammock swung gently as a breeze passed through the trees, and in that moment, it felt like the universe was giving us a little push, encouraging us to take the leap we'd both been avoiding. I want to try, I said, squeezing his hand. If you do. Instead of answering with words, Jake gently tugged at my shoulder, encouraging me to turn toward him despite the challenge of doing so in the confined space. With some awkward maneuvering and near disasters that sent us into fits of laughter, I managed to shift until we were face to face, our noses almost touching in the limited space. Seeing Jake's expression, the mixture of hope, affection, and nervous excitement that surely mirrored my own, confirmed everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a moment of physical closeness creating temporary feelings. This was the culmination of 2 years of building something special between us. Hi, Jake said simply, his smile soft and intimate in a way I had never seen before. Hi yourself, I replied, unable to stop my own smile from spreading across my face. What happened next felt as natural as breathing. Jake leaned forward, closing the small distance between us, and pressed his lips gently against mine. The hammock swayed beneath us, but I had never felt more stable, more grounded, despite being suspended in air. The kiss was soft and questioning at first, then grew more confident as we both leaned into the newfound connection. When we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Jake's eyes were bright with emotion. I've wanted to do that for so long, he admitted. Why didn't you? I asked, genuinely curious about what had held back someone as brave and spontaneous as Jake. He laughed, the sound warm and intimate in the small space between us. Because you're not just anyone, Liam. You're my best friend. I couldn't bear the thought of messing that up if you didn't feel the same way. The honesty in his voice touched something deep within me. I guess we've both been overthinking things. For once, your caution rubbed off on me, Jake teased, his hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead. The casual intimacy of the gesture made my heart swell. We stayed in the hammock for what felt like hours, talking about everything and nothing, occasionally sharing kisses that grew more comfortable and familiar with each passing moment. We discussed when our feelings had shifted, laughing at the obliviousness we had both displayed. Jake admitted he had realized his feelings during a movie night months ago when I had fallen asleep on his shoulder, and he hadn't wanted to move despite his arm going numb. I confessed that I had known something was different when I found myself making mental notes of things to tell him throughout my day, collecting moments specifically to share with him. As the afternoon began to wane, with the sun casting longer shadows across the park, we reluctantly acknowledged that we would eventually have to leave our hammock sanctuary. The world outside was continuing on, unaware of the monumental shift that had occurred between us. We should probably get out of this thing before it gets dark, Jake said, though he made no move to disentangle himself from our embrace. Probably, I agreed with equal reluctance. Though I have to say, I'm not sure getting out will be any easier than getting in was. Jake grinned, that familiar mischievous spark returning to his eyes. Maybe we should just live here now. We could become park fixtures. The hammock guys, people would bring us food and tell us their problems. I laughed, picturing the absurd scenario. As tempting as that sounds, I think we'd eventually want a shower. Always the practical one, Jake teased, leaning in to steal another quick kiss. That's why I need you around. The process of extracting ourselves from the hammock proved to be just as comical and challenging as getting in had been. After several failed attempts that left us laughing so hard we could barely move, we finally managed to roll out one at a time, landing somewhat ungracefully on the grass below. Standing face to face in the golden late afternoon light, without the forced proximity of the hammock, I felt a moment of uncertainty. Would things be different now that we were back in the real world? Jake seemed to sense my hesitation, reaching out to take my hand in his. intertwining our fingers in a way that felt both new and completely right. "So," he said, a slight nervousness in his voice that was endearing coming from usually confident Jake. "What happens now?" I looked down at our joined hands, then back up at his face, the face I had come to know better than almost anyone else's over the past 2 years. "Now we keep doing what we've always done, just with more of this." I squeezed his hand, and this, I leaned in to kiss him softly. Jake's smile was radiant as he pulled me closer. "I like the sound of that plan. See, you're not the only one who can appreciate good planning." As we walked hand in hand through the park, heading back toward campus with the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I couldn't help but think about the serendipity of the day. If Jake hadn't spotted that hammock, if I hadn't agreed to his crazy suggestion that we both squeeze into it, if the close quarters hadn't given me the courage to finally acknowledge my feelings, how much longer might we have circled around what was happening between us? "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, noticing my contemplative expression. "Just that I'm glad you didn't let me out of that hammock when it started swinging," I replied honestly. "Sometimes being stuck in an uncomfortable situation leads to exactly where you need to be." Jake laughed, pulling me closer to his side as we walked. "That might be the most profound thing I've ever heard you say. And for the record, I'm glad too. Though I have to admit, I wasn't exactly suffering being pressed up against you like that." I felt my cheeks warm at his teasing, but I didn't mind. This new dimension to our relationship felt right, like we had been moving toward it all along without realizing it. In the weeks and months that followed, Jake and I navigated the transition from friends to something more with surprising ease. There were awkward moments, of course, and adjustments to be made, but the foundation of friendship that we had built made everything else feel natural. We still studied together, still argued about movie choices, still balanced each other's tendencies toward caution and spontaneity. But now there were also quiet moments of intimacy, shared secrets whispered in the dark, and the comfort of knowing that what we had found together was rare and worth protecting. We returned to that hammock in the park many times throughout that summer, sometimes to recreate our first day together, sometimes just to enjoy the peaceful swinging sensation while talking about our dreams for the future. It became our spot, a physical reminder of the day everything changed. Looking back now, I can see how that afternoon in the hammock was a perfect metaphor for our relationship. The initial awkwardness giving way to comfort, the precarious balance that somehow worked when we both committed to it, the way we held on to each other to keep from falling. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you allow yourself to be a little uncomfortable, when you squeeze into spaces that seem too small and discover they're exactly where you're meant to be. And as for Jake and me, well, that's a story that's still being written, one day at a time, with all the caution and spontaneity that makes us who we are together. Total _char_count, 18,793.